Okay, I think we have waited for 3 minutes. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all here. This is the third of the soil conversations on the soil security uh, that we are co-organizing with Aroura, and it's in promotion of the IUCN Motion Not 7 on soil security. Welcome all. This is the third one. So if you're interested in looking at what we spoke in the last two conversations, you could go to safesoil.org/soil conversations. And this particular panel is very, very important and very relevant for all of us who work on soil because it's about codification. And we have two speakers with us, very esteemed speakers, and I'm very privileged to be having them along here. Professor Alex, who's part of the Australian Research Council Laureate Fellow, Professor of Digital Agriculture and Soil Sciences, University of Sydney. And we also have Dr. Irene Heuser, Chair of the Specialist Group on Soil and Sustainable Agriculture Law, and also IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. So thanks a lot for both of our esteemed speakers. And before we get the floor to the speakers, I would request Dr. Julio, who is the postdoctoral research associate in soil security, University of Sydney, who has been moderating the last two panels, to kind of give us a quick overview of what was spoken in the last two panels before we get the panel conversation started. Over to you, Julio.
Thank you, Praveena. Give me a second. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Praveena, again, and thank you to our speakers today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Just want to take a couple minutes to go over the soil security framework and make sure that we're all on the same page, what it is and why does it matter right now. And I also want to acknowledge before we start some of the people that made this webinar possible. Of course, the speakers from all the three sessions, but also some of the people you won't hear from, like Lu Yu for her coordination, Kantan Stick and Wartinunga, and Tilini Yayasekar for promoting the panel from the Aroura side, as well as Diana Balas Subramanian in Spandana, Champavad, for the promotion of these webinars from the Safe Soil side. Now, what it is and what does it matter? We know, and we've discussed widely, how soil is at the very heart of all of the global existential challenges, and that soil security itself is a global existential challenge. Lee Wharf said that languages shape the way we think and determines the way we can think about. And so the soil security framework gives us a way to coordinate in order to do global action. At its very heart, it is 5 dimensions. It is a matrix of 5 dimensions, not only the classical biogeochemical ones, but also extending into some social ones that asks us, well, what is the value of that specific soil in a place? What is the bond that people have with a specific soil in that place? And today, as we're going to be talking, what are the policies and laws that exist for that soil or that should exist for that soil? So why was this created? Well, in the discussion of the last webinar, PhD candidate in international law and soils, Hannah Swinvenberg, asked about how we can deal with the enormity of soils. Soils are engaged in so many ways, and it feels so big to address them properly at local and global scales. Some soil conferences talk about very separate items from each other or are maybe too focused on just a very salient example like food production. The soil security framework is meant to add vocabulary and map a better way to coordinate our efforts. So it gives us 115 ways to think about soils and quickly mapping what are we going to be talking about. So it gives us 40 different ways to talk about the soil functions that we have right here. It gives us 35 different ways to quickly map and talk about about 7 soil services. And it gives us 40 different ways to think about soil threats. So that's what the soil security framework is about. And we have had some really incredible discussions in the first two webinars. The first one was all about capacity and condition. And it would be unfair for me to try to very quickly go over everything that was spoken by these very incredible presenters. So right there you have both a QR code as well as the link to the webinars. But just to give you a very, very quick taste, we had talks about how the efforts being done in ICRAF across Africa to get more information about soil, using the soil security framework in the Java island of Indonesia, and being used right now by the government from Dr. Wirastuti Wijayanti. And then we also had an example in Australia for the condition of the soil function for soil nutrient cycling. So the second webinar was about capital and connectivity. And I presented some work that we have been doing in order to get and measure the actions, the attitudes, and the knowledge that people have across Australia. Avanti Pete talked about the efforts that are being done by the Safe Soil movement all across the world and make people aware of these issues. And then we also had Dr. Hani Mohani, who gave us some incredibly touching stories about how the Shavana tribe in Central Asia keeps their stories alive in order to protect the pastures that they still depend on to this day. Finally, Didi Pershouse gave us a little bit of a warning of some of the issues that may occur by monetizing soil, but we had a very, very nice discussion of what it is and why to do it. So again, you can find all of that and more by going to that QR code. But without further ado, today we're going to be talking about codification. And again, just by saying this dimension, we can already start putting our framework of what is it that we're talking about. And there has been a lot of efforts, and I've been reading about this for well over a decade, including the International Yearbook of Soil Law and Policy that is co-edited by one of our speakers today, Dr. Irene Heuser. And it boils down to just the idea that policymaking is very difficult at all levels, and part of the reason is that we need to dig a soil profile to really understand soils, and you need to look below the surface, which is something that most people won't do. And because of that, even though that there are several international conventions to recognize the importance of soil conservation, to this day, despite many efforts across the years, there's still no overarching and transnational framework for soils. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and that hopefully sets the entire conversation. I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you, Praveena, and on to back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julio. I think we have somebody really esteemed with us, Professor Alex, who's been in many ways the creator of this soil security framework itself. Alex, would you please teach us all what you have kind of put together here and educate us all here as to why this framework is like, while Julio gave us the number of services and the aspects that it covers, like how did it come about, and delve a little deeper into it and educate us. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. I'll share my slides. I might need Julio's help here just to make sure I've pressed the right button here.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Oh, did that do anything? Is that what we need, or is it the other way around, Julio?
It's the other way around.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and
I will
top left corner. Yeah, yeah.
and the first option.
The first option.
First option. Okay. Okay, all good?
Yep.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for organizing this. Thank the foundation and Save Soil. It's wonderful to share some thoughts with you guys and work with you into the future. So thanks for doing all of this stuff. As you said, I've been working on this concept for about 10 years, soil security. But now, like many things, it takes a while to get the ideas developed and to make them start to move. But I think we're starting to move the idea. So what I'm going to talk about is admittedly a soil-centric framework, which because I think for us to secure soil into the future, we have to take a soil-centric view and not simply a view that sees soil that does something for someone else, and you do that in 100 different places. I think we do need to have a soil-centric view for at least for every country. And so what I'm talking about today is if you were a country, and I'm not talking about any country in particular, just any country that you might come from, how would you go about setting up a soil security strategy for that country? And to do that, you will need to think about some policies and some actions, and therefore that's really what I'm talking about today. And as I say here, this is very much a work in progress. It's work that we're doing here at the university, but it's also work we're doing in the think tank. And we'll be producing a discussion paper on this work in the near future. But what I present now is the work in progress, and I'm happy for you to see it. As Julio said, we've got these 5 dimensions for soil security. 2 of them, capacity and condition, are about the biophysical aspects, and condition really is what most people call soil health. But we call it condition because we recognize to understand soil condition or health, you need to know what the capacity of the soil is. In other words, not all soils are the same, and we don't expect all soils to be able to produce the same or act in the same way. Even if they are low producing soils, that does not mean they are in poor condition or unhealthy. They may be in perfect condition. It may just be their role in the ecosystem is that. Capital is about the economics, and connectivity is about the connection between soil and humanity. Now, codification today is really about governance, policy frameworks, law, etc. And of course, it could be in the public sector or it could be in the private sector. We wouldn't distinguish between those two. But for any country to have a soil security framework, we would expect them to deal with all of these dimensions simultaneously. So while codification is what we're talking about, it is also one of the dimensions. So we would not consider a soil to be secure if we couldn't estimate its capacity and condition, or what its capital, either production capital or its natural capital value might be. We wouldn't consider it secure if it wasn't connected to humanity or humanity wasn't connected to it. And we certainly wouldn't consider it secure if it didn't have any policy or regulation or law governing it. So that's why we need to look at all of these. But what I'm talking about today falls in the last category, really. But we would attempt in any strategy to have a multi-dimensional integration. Just trying to find my mouse. Where did it go? Okay. So obviously, I won't say too much about it. We all obviously have current challenges. We have key threats to soil all over the world, whether it be erosion or loss of organic carbon, or whether it's sealing in some places, or just climate change changing how soils behave in the environment. And roughly speaking, the annual cost of soil degradation or loss loss of condition is around 2 to 3% of GDP across the world. So that's a huge figure. And we can consider that probably about 20% of the world is in a severely degraded condition, and another 30% moderately degraded, and so on. So there's a huge problem out there with degradation of soil condition, which is how we would put it in the soil security framework. Now, let's say we want to secure our soil into the future. We are a country, we want to secure it. So what would we think about? Well, I've written it in the terms of I've got a target. So here I'm suggesting we've got a 20-year target to achieve soil security, because I think it's something that will take one to 2 decades to figure out, implement, and put in place and measure. So we want to sustainably manage our soil resources to support ecosystems, communities, and the economy. So we want to achieve functioning and resilient soil ecosystems. We want to optimize ecosystem soil service delivery, some of which are what people would call ecosystem services. Some are more than that. We want to eliminate net soil degradation. In other words, we certainly want to keep the net condition in the same state as at least. We want to integrate soil security into all policies that might be relevant, and we want to build a comprehensive soil security capacity. That's largely to do with human, institutional, and technical capacity. So we would need to do all of those things together. That would be our strategic objectives, and we might have targets. And all of this is notional, might differ from country to country, but it gives a flavor of what you might want to do. So for 20 years, we might want a 75% improvement in soil condition or health indicators, 60% increase in ecosystem service provision, and sustainable institutional arrangements for doing all of that. So that's just the kind of thing that you might want to do. So when you start off to do this, you've got your goals. Now you say, well, what principles do I need to achieve soil security? And we've done a load of work on that. And at the bottom of the slide there, you'll see a paper that goes into this in some detail. But I'll just summarize it very quickly here. The first thing, the most important thing, is to recognize that soils are diverse. There's a huge diversity of soil, and they're not all the same. And we need to recognize and treat that diversity. And that's why policy in one country might look different from policy in another country because of the diversity of soil. But that's still a principle that we need to recognize the diversity of our soils in each country. And where we have special endemic soils, we certainly want to protect them or secure them for humanity and for the nation. We want some kind of multifunctional soil management. It's not just about biomass production. It's about all the different functions and services that soil provides. And we need to come up with a strategy that deals with all of those. We need to take a precautionary approach and minimize risk. We do need stakeholder engagement and participatory governance. And we do need adaptive management and continuous learning. Now, if you read the paper by Sharififa, you'll see a lot more on policy. But these are just some ideas that should underlie whatever strategy we have. So we've got some policy principles, and then they drive policies. So these are principles. So what I'm going to suggest as a first cut at how you might do this for a country is 5 broad national policies. Now, you might have 4, you might have 7, but I'm going to give you 5, and they cover the 9 principles of soil policy and 5 dimensions of soil security and the 3 roles of functions, services, and threats which soil play. So first of all, you would want some sort of integrated monitoring network. You want to know in what state is, we've got this huge diversity of soil, we need to look at that, and then we need to monitor how that's changing. So you do need a monitoring network. The thing that we bring in soil security is the idea of reference states and reference soils, genosoils and phenosoils, and that's something that doesn't exist in these soil health frameworks, and I think that brings a lot of advantage. And we would want to bring a monitor, evaluate, adapt, learn cycle to report progress and recalibrate the policy. But you need some sort of monitoring network to monitor how things are changing, and there are different ways to do that, but we're not going to go into the detail of that. You probably want to base something around a land use planning framework. In other words, and it's more around a soil capacity and condition planning framework, because we want to protect high value, irreplaceable soils. We want to require soil assessments for major projects and align spatial planning with soil capability and risk. So I think we need to tie the condition and capacity of our soil and its capital value into a planning framework that says what you can do to various bits of soil. So that goes along with it. Along with that, we would like to see a soil services valuation and incentives. In other words, we want to value the services that soil provides, whether it's carbon sequestration, water regulation, biodiversity, productivity, and come up with some mechanisms, largely public sector, but perhaps private sector, perhaps finance-based mechanisms that deploy stewardship payments, that give payments for ecosystem or soil service schemes, and market instruments that drive those, align some taxes and levy layers together, and standardized measurement, reporting and verification, so land stewards are rewarded for verified outcomes. So that's a very important part of the whole thing. We would like to see a threat prevention framework to prevent the threats to soil, erosion, compaction, etc., and fund restoration of seriously degraded soil. While we can give incentives for improvement, we do need to probably, in seriously degraded areas, fund some kind of restoration programs, find the best practice management, and measure gains in soil condition. And then, of course, we need a governance framework for participatory action, because as we've heard from the foundation, it's really about the landholders and farmers and whoever is looking after the soil to work on this, because they're the ones that are closest to the soil. So you need some co-design with them. You need to bring in indigenous knowledge, etc., and civil society. You need to build national capacity, maintain some independent advice, and use some sort of transparent digital platforms to share the methods and so on. So we would see a national strategy having these 5 policies and having all the mechanisms to drive those policies. But they all go together. We wouldn't pick one over another. We would try to do them all together. And then obviously you would want to implement that. In this template or proposal, we're suggesting a 20-year time frame. It may be shorter, but it will have to go through a number of phases and have to work at the level from the stakeholder partnerships, public-private collaborations, to local, regional and national level. The first phase is just establishing the institutions and the monitoring systems, the legal frameworks, and initial programs might take 5 years. Then you need to expand it up to scale it up, expand the conservation and restoration efforts. The third phase might be integrating soil security into all policy areas and optimizing program performance. And then at the end, we want some sustainability and maintenance, ensuring the long-term sustainability of our achievements over the previous years. The time frame is notional, but I just put that down so that we could have an idea. And obviously, we want to integrate what we're doing with national, regional, and regional, I mean, international and global frameworks. And we would want to integrate policies, and this is something that we think about a lot in Australia, between agricultural policy and environmental policy. We would want to integrate those also with climate policy and urban policy. We would like to see regional or local, international, and bilateral cooperation, transboundary ideas, regional knowledge, technology transfer. And then, of course, we would want to see an international alignment framework through the Sustainable Development Goals, climate change, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and UNCCD. And we would be looking at a number of the Sustainable Development Goals that. But what I would say now is we actually need an international agreement on soil security itself. I think that would be the best approach. And that's the reason why we set up the think tank, to actually try and achieve in a 5 or maybe 10-year period some sort of international agreement around soil security. And just to finish up, we need a call to action to achieve this. And I think the best way to do that is to explain the benefits of doing all of this in the implementation phases. There will be environmental benefits, there will be economic benefits, and there will be social benefits. And there will be a multi-level governance architecture driving all of this. So I will say the time for action is now, and together we can secure our soil resources for current and future generations. And with that, I think I'll finish. And I'll try and escape out of this and stop sharing. Is that okay?
Yep.
All done. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I think the way you said there is a need for soil-centric view from every country, that's something we definitely echo with continuously. And the entire concept that you shared, in many ways, for all the 5 C's to come about, or rather the first 4 C's to come about, the 5th C, codification, is mandatory. And I really like the fact that you said a GDP of 2 to 3% is lost by degraded soils. I don't know if all of us can imagine what that is. If the world economy, if you were to look at the world economy, it amounts to around somewhere around $110 trillion all put together. If you were to lose 2 to 3% of it, that actually means $2 to $3 trillion worth of value that soils can provide is lost. That is, it's equal to economy of either Italy or Brazil or Russia or Canada, one of those, you're losing that much of, resource value that soils provide for us year on year. And
I estimated the ecosystem value of soils to be $300 trillion.
Yeah, I think that value may actually go up if we kind of expand, if we understood soil fully. Right now we understand soil may be just 10% of it. Given that understanding, it's 300 trillion. If we were to understand it fully, what would that be, right? So
well, that's true. It's a very interesting concept, but I think the 2 to 3% of GDP is something that most people can come to terms with. They might not know the value, but they understand that that's a significant proportion of any economy.
Indeed, indeed, yes. So thanks a lot for setting the larger context, and I would now invite Dr. Irene to share with us very specifically on the motion 007, our James Bond of what should I say, the soil security and the legal framework, and she's been instrumental in putting the whole thing together. So over to you, Dr. Irene.
Thank you very much, Praveena. I will just have a look at my presentation, which got lost somehow, but just a minute, please.
Yeah.
Doesn't work, sorry. Some technical stuff here at the moment.
No problem. Do you have it? I think we have it, and we'll try and see if we can
sent
present.
it to Lou already, so maybe
Yeah.
she can just include it. Will be very
Yeah. Why don't you present?
Can
Can you stop presenting? Then Lou will try and present from here.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much, Lou. Yes. Namaskaram, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody who is participating in this webinar. I'm really happy about our collaboration with the Isha Foundation, Safe Soil Movement, and the Aroura think tank, and of course my own organization, the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. And I would like to start over from what Alex has already said, and he has already explained a lot, and I could directly jump into aspects that have to do more with the legal background. And slide number 4, please. Sorry, I have to say slide number this and this now. So the role of law is something that is really important here in this context. Number 4, please.
Oh, yeah.
No, yes, exactly. And I suppose that most of the audience here in this webinar are not environmental lawyers or dealing with policy so much. So maybe just a few remarks on the role of law and the rule of law. Law provides a framework in which the society operates, and it protects rights and freedoms. This is very important, especially for example, for property rights in national law, but also for human rights in international law, so for the whole realm of law. And it provides also mechanisms to resolve disputes. The principle of the environmental rule of law, not role of law, integrates environmental needs with the essential elements of the rule of law, and it provides, so to say, the basis for environmental governance. And this is why I mention it here at the moment, because it's very much important, very important also in the context of soil security law. So the next slide, please. I think Alex has already elaborated on a very good example, or the next one, sorry, on a very good example using the Australian example, the Australian legal system. Slide number 5, sorry. The national soil security law system is very fragmented worldwide. From a legal point of view, securing soil requires protecting all functions. That's why I have included the soil security framework slide before. All functions and services and against all threats to soil. And I think that in the first webinar, Martini, Sandra, and Julio have already explained this context very deeply. So at the national level, governments can enact and implement law, also policies, incentives, also investments for soil security. And these provisions can be either specific, like in a soil protection or in a more comprehensive Soil Security Act, or included in general environmental protection acts, which also exists, or also considered as side aspects of other acts or other legal instruments. And of course, there can be a specific, the specific dimensions of soil security could also be included in legal categories other than environmental law, such in public participation rights. Next one, please. And in many countries, we are dealing with the specific threats to soil. Next one, please. Alex has already mentioned all these dimensions, and therefore I would just like to mention this and to give you some examples. So, for example, in the United States, we have the Soil and Water Conservation Act, quite old, of 1977. Or in China, we have the Soil Pollution Prevention and Control Act, dealing with specific aspects of soil security and with specific threats to soil. And if you want to have a closer look, you can have a look at the SoilX website of the FAO, Global Soil Partnership. And there you can find this database, for example. These are just some examples from the SoilX database, if you are looking for a kind of tailor-made soil protection instrument. And this would be helpful very much. So I would like to come to the regional level, slide number 11. Not the next one, but the one. We can go into specific legal instruments later if you would like to know more about that. So next one, please. At the regional level, there are a number of binding regional instruments, also in the context of soil security, sometimes in other contexts, but of course it depends. You need a closer look to see whether soil security, whether it's about soil security or whether it's about general aspects. For example, I would like to stress the ASEAN agreement on the protection of nature and natural resources. ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and it includes six countries: Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. And it includes an Article 7 in this agreement, which requests the contracting parties to take measures wherever possible towards soil conservation, that was the term these days, improvement and rehabilitation. And these countries shall in particular endeavor to take steps to prevent soil erosion and other forms of degradation, and to promote measures which safeguard the processes of organic decomposition. So you see, it's kind of an older terminology, soil conservation, and there are many relativizing words included, like to take an endeavor to take steps or take measures whenever possible. But at least in 1985, this was kind of progressive. And in a similar way, there is a revised African Convention for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, also with an Article 6 that calls on the parties to take effective measures to prevent land degradation, to develop long-term integrated strategies for the conservation and sustainable management of soil resources. Doesn't also sound like soil security in a very comprehensive way, but at least there is something on the regional level. And I hope there will be a much better example also, because the Pan-African Parliament is about to adopt a model legislation on sustainable soil management in Africa recently. I think it has already been adopted, or it will be adopted in October. So this is concerning the African point of view. And in the European Union, we also don't have a comprehensive legal instrument addressing soil security and addressing all threats to soil. There are some directives that are relevant, like the sewage sludge directive, a very old one, or the waste legislation, or of course parts of the common agricultural policy. And in the European Green Deal of 2020, there has been discussions about a soil health law, which has never been adopted yet. It could be still, but it just led to a soil monitoring law in the EU, which will be adopted in October 25. I think Alex has already said a lot about the sense and necessity, of course, of monitoring legislation. But if this is all, there is still lacking a lot of material legislation, and this is the case for the EU at the moment. We already had a discussion about a soil framework directive in 2006, which was a very negative experience because it was systematically reduced by the influence of lobby groups in the EU, and finally withdrawn by the European Commission in 2014, I think. So maybe I go on to the next part, the International Soil Security Law. This will be slide 14. Yes, next
14.
one, please. 14, and the next one, sorry. International soil security law is also relevant between sovereign states to develop standards and at the international level, and to provide obligations for states, not for individuals, but for states, in order to regulate the behavior in soil-related international matters. So it would provide a framework if an international soil security law existed, which is not the case yet. It would provide a framework for countries to cooperate and to coordinate their efforts to address soil degradation. And this kind of cooperation is very much needed from my point of view. Next slide, please. Concerning the binding international law aspects, we have the 3 conventions I already mentioned in the slide before: the United Nations Framework Convention to Combat Climate Change, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. These 3 Rio Conventions might influence soil security, but they do not include at the moment anywhere near a sufficient range of legal instruments to protect and to secure soil against all threats, and to manage soil in a sustainable way, because the policies often have other aims and other scopes of action. And this is the major starting point of the motion 007 you already mentioned, Praveena, and I will explain this a little bit. Next slide. Oh, no, maybe we leave it at this slide because we start, no, maybe the one before. Sorry, the United Nations Convention to a Framework Convention on Climate Change primarily focuses on mitigating climate change and the impacts of climate change. Soils, of course, have a capacity to regulate the climate by storing carbon. But besides that, the UNFCCC falls short in addressing soil security. It lacks specific targets related to soil protection and restoration, so the member countries may not prioritize soil security in the climate action plans. The approach is fragmented. Of course, there is still a lack of coordination between all Rio conventions. And due to the limited integration of soil policies into climate policies, the UNFCCC means that opportunities to leverage soil management for climate change, mitigation and adaptation, they are normally missed or they are not really included. And this is important, the Paris Agreement relies on voluntary commitments, the nationally determined contributions. They are not legally binding. So this is just a procedural aspect of in this whole context. And concerning the Convention on Biological Diversity, There's also a lack of explicit focus. The CBD primarily addresses conservation of biological diversity. So it's related to biodiversity, but not really to soil security. And the integration is limited. Soil security is linked to biodiversity conservation and to all this, but not really to not even to soil health, so to say. And of course, with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework of December 22, this is a major step. It addresses pollution and changes in land use, but is not sufficient, of course, from this point of view. And the last one is the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the UNCCD, aims at combating DDLD, desertification, drought, and land degradation, particularly in African countries. It acknowledges the importance of soil health within the context of desertification and land degradation, but it might not have a specific dedicated focus on soil security. And the scope is limited. It is formally only applicable in drylands, which occupy only 40% of the Earth's terrestrial surface. So the geographic focus is already limited. And not all, the convention does not contain soil-specific action. I mean, we have started to do this in the context of the UNCCD, but not in a systematic or comprehensive way that the concept of soil security would allow for. I just would like to finish with this aspect. Of course, there are maybe the next slides. We jump over, we jump over the next slides, the next 3 slides, just to give you an impression that there are many non-binding legal instruments worldwide. And I would like to come to slide 21. Because in a nutshell, or in a conclusion, binding legal instruments on international level play a vital role in ensuring soil security already. This is true, because the 3 Rio Conventions partly include soil security, more or less soil health. Maybe the next slide, sorry. Since the scopes of these legal instruments on international level do not ensure comprehensive protection from all threats to soil, it is essential to continue to develop and implement legal instruments. This slide shows that, of course, there is a relevance also of the SDGs of the Agenda 2030 for sustainable development, and the important role that soils play in the whole context of the SDGs. But this important role has not been acknowledged so far. And next slide, please. Therefore, it is essential to continue to develop and implement legal instruments that are more specific on soil security. At the moment, there is no specific comprehensive international treaty, and achieving soil security and in general also soil sustainability requires a concerted effort for policymakers, but no, by policymakers, by farmers, by companies, consumers, to promote soil security, soil health. At the moment, soil is still the pro-cousin of environmental policy and law, and we need to change this in order to secure soil for future generations. And now I come to the motion. Next slide, please. The motion 007. Next one, please. IUCN, the World Commission on Environmental Law, has been implementing WCC soil resolutions. WCC is the World Conservation Congress of IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And we have been dealing with this topic since 2020 at least, and have investigated several soil resolutions already. Maybe we switch to the next slide to give you some better insights. These are the first ones that they were called resolutions on legal aspects of the sustainable use of soil. And the IUCN World Commission has been investigating in international, regional, and national law, preparing guidelines. We have, we were really active in discussing all these aspects and putting the focus on soil protection. We called that soil protection at that moment. Soil protection measures, also on improving the implementation of the Rio Conventions. And we came to the conclusion, next slide, please, that this is not enough, that we need much more. We have started to think about legal instruments on the international level. And this is why we have in the specialist group on soil and sustainable agriculture law, we have discussed this in the last year and the beginning of this year. And we came up with a motion on soil security law. And it was very funny that this motion got the number 007. And my colleagues have Rachel and Julie have painted kind of with the help of AI a very nice cartoon for this motion. I can't download it here, but if you have a look at the LinkedIn website of the Soil and Sustainable Agriculture Law Specialist Group of IUCN WCEL, you will find it, and it's very. I hope this will help to promote our motion a little bit. The context of the motion is not a very long thing. It's just one pager, like all these motions. They are not very long, so you don't have so much space to write in depth about soil security law and what is needed. But we have started to discuss or to stress that soil security is one of the existential global challenges. Then, of course, they have been in this process of writing the motion. They have aspects like the definition of soil security. We could discuss capacity versus capability a little bit later on, but these are the details. The main thing is that soil security deserves the same legal protection as the other global challenges. And also that it's one of the nature contributions to people. This is soil security is part of it. Indigenous knowledge is very important in this context. And we also stressed the importance of soil security for the SDGs in this SDG context. I've already explained that a little bit. So we came to the conclusion that we need an urgent development of a dedicated global legal instrument. I mean, it would be, of course, the best to have an own convention, but we can discuss this later. It could also be another legal form of a global legal instrument. But this is the main part of this motion. And of course, I hope that this motion at the World Conservation Congress in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks will be recognized, will be adopted by the members of IUCN in the Assembly. We don't know yet. We have a lot of support for this motion, and maybe you can also support this process if you have contacts to IUCN members. So maybe Praveena, I stop here at this point. Thank you very much for your attention, and yes, any questions will welcome. Thanks, Lou, for showing the presentation.
Can you unmute me? Thank you, Irene. That was wonderful to see Mm, the tenacity with which you have been at it from 2000, it's 25 years, and from 2000 the efforts has been on and on and on. I think we as Safe Soil Movement, we kind of please accept our gratitude, Alex, you and all of you who have been working for soils for decades together. We as a movement have started working and participating in the global platforms maybe in the last 3-4 years, but we have worked with farmers in the past, and it's come to be that we are voicing for soils globally now. And in the 4 years, the journey we have had, it's been quite a journey, I would say, and to be at it, it takes certain kind of mettle. And thanks for being that voice, and congratulations, and please accept our gratitudes as well. Before we move on to the question and answer session with both the speakers, I really want to share here that the remarks made by Alex and you about having something like this as a global instrument. It's that, like Alex very nicely put, Professor Alex very nicely put, a horizon of 20 years for having a national soil security policy framework and a legal framework in place. He gave countries 20 years. And I also see that he had actually shared enough avenues for people to improve it in a manner that it takes feedback into consideration of everybody. So I have questions for both of you, and it's coming from an experience that when we started working in India here, based on our experience in India, we actually did some policy advocacy to Government of India, and that was to do with making trees on farms a lot more happen in India. In our context, soil, given that we are a tropical country, trees are good for improving farmer livelihoods. Because the land holdings are very small, so we need different sources of income and also insurances if the crops were to fail in small parts of land, and trees happen to be the epitome of all that is security and insurance for farmers. And in our journey, what we found is that we did a large movement which kind of touched over 116 million people, asking the government to do the change with respect to policy so that farmers can do the right thing in their land with respect to trees. We did this in 2017, and in 2025, that is this year, we have seen the entire thing come to conclusion in terms of policy cycle. That is, we have certain amendment of certain forest conservation laws which allows now farmers to do the tree based agriculture in their land. We have been able to see policy changes happen with respect to supporting farmers procedurally in helping them felling and transit the trees without them being looked upon as people to be punitively dealt with, right? Like the burden of proving the trees come from the farmer's land rather than forest was on the farmers. Now that's kind of shifted. So it's taken us 7 to 8 years in this journey, and Alex himself says that from the point of creation of a policy until the policy maturation is 20 years. So in this process, my question now, Alex, is that what are the metrics and standards that will need to be in place so that a soil security policy, national level policy or law, a legal framework can be in place? Once you answer this, I'll get my question to Irene next. Thanks.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's a straightforward question. So what do I see happening around the world? So what I see happening around the world is in every country, particularly in Europe and in the US, where I go there, people are only worried about indicators of soil condition or soil health. That's all they. So the whole scientific community is working on indicators. The problem with that is nobody people aren't thinking about why they're doing this. So I think we need the principles and the policy, and an agreement on what functions and services and threats we are trying to target. I think then it's quite straightforward to come up with a range of standards for measuring things. I actually believe in something that isn't talked about, isn't in the literature, which are indicator classes. In other words, ways of measuring something. Let's say the carbon content or something else. But not just one way of measuring it. You might have 4 or 5 ways of measuring it, depending on the context, whether that context is as a very, very detailed financial instrument, or whether it's for a farming situation where you just want to demonstrate that the land is in better condition than it was 5 years ago. So I think we need to have some agreement about these indicator classes, and that's something I've seen nowhere at all. But I don't think that's difficult. I think, especially in relation to the biophysical dimensions of capacity and condition, we have 100 years of soil science, and we figured out how to measure most things. So, but a lot of the discussion that you hear in these conferences is about arguments about whether you do it this way or that way. But if you do it in a longitudinal way, in other words, you make the same kind of measurement through time, it doesn't really matter. You're just showing that you're going in the right direction. So that's kind of my feeling about that. It doesn't answer your question fully or properly, but I think that's the best answer I can give at the moment. I'm not one of these scientists that says, and like many of my colleagues, oh, we don't know that. We need some more money to do research. I don't say that. I don't believe that. I think we know full well how to do lots of things, and that's it.
I think that's a wonderful answer for people who fuss around a lot on which instrument does the most accurate measurement, rather than and wanting enough proofs to do the right thing. Like if you do the right thing will happen. That's a great input. Like
I believe that's a diversionary tactic. But anyway,
I think I agree with you on that. Thank you. So, Irene, Dr. Irene, coming to you. See, you mentioned and you actually listed enormous number of international conventions that talk about regionally and internationally about soil, but not really legally, what should I say, binding that exist. How do you see having a legally binding soil security motion like that we are trying to get going in IUCN will build policy coherence between all the conventions that exist already?
Yeah, thank you, Praveena, for this question. Of course, there are some links in the existing conventions, and I don't want to act or to have a statement that this is not already covered in a certain way, but it's not covered in a comprehensive way. We don't have a comprehensive soil security convention. We don't have any binding legal instruments on soil security yet. We just have these links to the existing conventions, which touch upon certain aspects of soil security, as I've explained already. And so what we really need, and I totally agree with what Alex has said, that we have a lot of discussion about we don't have enough knowledge for a soil legal instrument, a binding one, and all this stuff. We have enough knowledge to protect soils and to develop a comprehensive legal instrument at the moment. We have, and it might take, as Alex has said, 5 to 10 years. This is okay. We have seen this with the plastic pollution treaty which has not been prepared in a certain way before, and we have all these discussions in the soil science community about soil security. We have discussions in the legal field. So at the time, I think that the time is ripe for a comprehensive binding legal instrument on soil security. We will have to discuss, you mentioned the different spheres, agricultural sphere, environmental sphere. Of course, there will be a lot of protest, as we have seen on EU level, against even the EU monitoring directive and the discussion about the EU soil health directive, which was reduced to very much reduced. The content of the proposal was not very all-including, not very high, because there were so many relative sentences, measures, if possible, something like that. What we really need is a concerted approach and concerted efforts, and really the conviction that we need to protect our soils. There are so many threats, and the amount of soil degradation is so high so that we really need to do something. I mean, I'm not a soil scientist, just a lawyer. So maybe I can't really say how many harvests we still have left, but at least from the aspect of food security, where we need soil security as well, this is linked, of course, also from the aspect of soil, of general health aspects. This is also linked to soil security, to soil health. So we really need to do much more than we do at the moment.
Thank you, Dr. Irene. I agree. Soil security is so fundamental to the concept of One Health that everyone is talking about, right? So coming back to you, Professor Alex, if soil security were to be formally codified, what would you see the soil science community needs to do to provide and make the transition workable and effective, the soil science community?
Yeah, okay. Once again, difficult questions. I've been getting difficult questions all year. It's been a difficult year for me. So the general soil science community have not recognized this idea of capacity and condition. It's not a difficult concept, but they haven't recognized that, and they haven't recognized the fact that in any country there will be soils, the same kind of soil which has been in good or almost pristine condition, and the same soil that's been modified by human activity. And we need to get them to understand that that's a way of giving you the target values for what you might want to do to any soil, go back to its more natural condition. So I think there's a bit of work needed there. The soil scientists have not engaged in the production or natural capital value of soil. So we need to educate them on that aspect. Soil education is strong, so that did, but holders could be much improved, I think, and that would improve connectivity and would improve the sustainable management of soil. So I think there's quite a lot of work to be done by people like me and educating the soil scientists. But as I said earlier, I think that the knowledge of soil science is quite strong. It's just that they don't have the correct framework at the moment, but the knowledge is there to make most of the measurements and assessments, I think. I think we could move forward reasonably quickly if we had an agreement about the framework that we are trying to do. The problem with the soil health concept is that it's vaguely defined, it has different meanings in different places. The European concept, when I look at it, is different from the North American concept, for example. And they don't have frameworks. They don't have, and so I think it's all about creating some kind of framework in which people can operate. But I don't see this as scientifically challenging.
Yeah.
And you know, I will not be popular for saying that, but that's the truth. I don't see this as scientifically challenging. I think it's hugely challenging to get a global agreement on anything. But I'm completely committed, but also intrinsically believe that we need an agreement around soil. It's as important as climate change or biodiversity or anything like that. It's a very similar kind of challenge to the world. If we got no soil, we're not eating, I'm telling you. Vertical farms outside cities provides 2% of food production.
Yeah. Be it vertical
non-soil food production is 2%.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if the non-soil food production actually gets the nutrition that soil gives.
No, that's another point. That's another point.
Yeah.
I should say that I'm currently working on a concept of agriculture called 3 N's, which is net zero, nature positive, nutrition balanced agriculture. That's a concept in which I'm working on at the moment, because I see that without those 3 concepts tied together, I don't think we will have a sustainable agriculture or population. So, but that's taking us somewhere else. So,
thank you, Alex. Coming to Dr. Irene, this will be my last question. After that, we can take some questions from the audience. You did mention about the farmer protest in Europe with respect to the soil monitoring directive. My question is, I think farmers many times feel cornered or over-regulated. There's that kind of feeling that exists among farmers. So how can we kind of make them allies for this entire endeavor of soil security, you know, becoming part of larger global or national legal, legally codified instruments?
Yeah, thank you, Praveena. This is also a very comprehensive question because there are so many possibilities at the national level to come to legal instruments. Not only the planning instruments, for example, which also include agricultural aspects. For example, setting up soil protection, soil security plans that might influence the whole aspects of direct behavior control, or even soil obligations. For example, if we have such a legal instrument that would provide also perspective, and it would be more clear what is needed from the farmer's side, but not only, of course, I don't want to limit it to the agricultural aspects, because there is also an industrial dimension, and it's really all sectors are included. building activities, and so on. So soil security includes all aspects, not only the farming perspective. But of course, there are the farmers' protests in Europe. They have a very strong lobby, and combined with the industrial lobby, they have already managed to get rid of the soil framework directive we had in 2006, which was also a limited example, but was better than nothing at this point. And now, we ended up in having nothing on soil protection in a legal on EU level at that time. We still don't have anything except for the monitoring directive, which will be adopted in October. But you were asking about how to convince farmers. I mean, I'm really, I have the conviction that many farmers already do a lot, and most of them have a good connection to their soils. I'm sure about that. So it will be also about strengthening this connection and strengthening this context. And this could be done in different ways. Of course, for example, we need to, for example, prohibit extremely soil endangering pollutants, for example. But this is for sure, this is not against the interests of the farmers. And if we have soil standards, soil values, it could also help to make the whole thing clearer. But we will also have to support the farming activities. And for example, there are even market-based instruments possible in the field of soil security, like subsidies, which already exist in the context of the European Common Agricultural Policy. But there are even taxes possible that support the activities, or we even have this context of permit trading systems, for example. We could also develop this on the in the field, in concerning different threats to soil. This is possible. So all these, also the financial support for farmers, if this support would include certain soil security activities, we have very good benefits for the soil, for the farmers, and it would be a concerted action, so to say. And there are many varieties of this way of thinking possible. Just to give you an example.
Thank you so much. Like, while you were speaking, I just want to also share here with this audience that we work with over 250,000 farmers in south of India and a few thousand farmers in west of India. What we have seen is that farmers usually are willing to be party to anything that improves their livelihoods, and building good soils, healthy living soils, through an intervention like this, a legal intervention like this, means that their livelihoods are secure, because healthy soil in this context, specifically for farmers, is drought resilient, flood resilient, temperature resilient. Therefore, the failures which are becoming very regular these days, given the change in climate, will be a lot more easily addressed. Rather, the percentage of failure a farmer faces is far lesser than the farmer whose soils are not secure, right? So, and we are seeing that the way we go about it in Safe Soil is that we train farmers in methods which actually build soils, secure soils, and then after training we handhold them, and they have a group of farmer network that supports them, and then in the journey of transitioning in building their soils, there is a huge handholding that is needed, along with financial incentives. When provided, they actually transition for good, and they become the voice for healthy living and secure soils. So thanks a lot, Irene. Now I'm going to ask both of you one question. I think this is something that Alex can answer better. Alex, I'm sorry if it's again a difficult question. The problem is that, I'm reading out the question, no? The problem is that soil science is losing momentum. A new generation is not interested in studying or investments in soils. How to solve this issue?
I don't accept the premise of the question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that.
Mm.
I think there are as many soil scientists today as there was in the past. There's a young generation, and 50% of them are women, maybe even 60% of them are women. So I think there's plenty of work. I'll do it in the Australian context. There are more people in more universities studying soil science than ever in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And there is more finance and incentive to work on soil. My only criticism of what we're doing at the moment is that we're focusing in on soil health or soil carbon, and I worry that that's too narrow because we should be working across the board. There's still a lot of soil physics and soil biochemistry that we need to understand. While I said earlier we know a lot, we do know a lot, but there's always so much more that we can learn. There are probably processes in the soil that we don't know about, and if we knew about those, that would help us to manage soil. So we should always continue our investigation. But I have a different experience. I go to the US, I go to Europe, I go to South America. I have some dealings with Indonesia and Australia, and everywhere I see lots of young people. And as I said, the gender balance is changing dramatically, which I think is a wonderful thing. The balance of what people work on, there's much more work in soil biology than there used to be in the past. But I'm hugely optimistic about soil science and where it's going. Or perhaps not, but maybe perhaps and recognizing soil security and getting some global instrument on it will help to secure soil, but it will also help to secure soil science, I think, and give it a raison d'etre. Once again, I didn't answer the question very well, but that's the best I can do.
No, I think you corrected the assumption or the premise of the question itself, and it's wonderful to know that it's happening in that
direction. I know that not everyone agrees with me on that, and it depends. In some countries people think differently, but that's how I'm very optimistic about most things, but particularly this one. And I've said this in international congresses that this is the best time ever to be a soil scientist.
That's wonderful to hear, and I think you being that optimistic, at Safe Soil we don't believe in pointing fingers at problem creators. We believe in creating solutions for the problems created by all of us together in the past by consuming the food that came from wherever it came. All of us did that. So we are all in it together, and we are all in it in the solution making as well. So that's great. There's one more question that I saw about how can carbon markets be leveraged in this process. I think, can I take that question? We have been trying quite a bit in that space actually. So I've
got some answers for that one too.
Okay, then you should answer if you have got good answers and not difficult questions. Please go ahead, Alex.
It's quite straightforward, and it goes back to what Irene was talking about, financial instruments and so on. In Australia, we have a soil carbon crediting scheme. It's controlled by regulation. It's not, although it is a private sector instrument, and the the credits that are created are tradable commodities. They are underpinned by regulation about how to measure this carbon and so on. So thereby you create an incentive to improve one of the soil functions, or several of them, one of them being the ability to store carbon. So you can tie soil security to this instrument. This instrument was created for the country to respond to the climate convention and the Paris agreements, but it does offer an instrument that helps with soil security. Likewise, we have some new legislation, which is our nature positive legislation, which comes out of that agreement, which will give, in the same way, tradable commodities for biodiversity on farms. So the work that you talked about earlier about putting trees on farms would be covered by that. But I also tried and have fought very hard for soil biodiversity to be included as a biodiversity measure. And I think we have succeeded. So thereby we have another instrument that will provide a financial incentive, which meets another convention, but will also make soil more secure. So I think that's the way of the future. We have global agreements, and then we make we obviously in some places we have to have some government subsidies or whatever for actions, but we could also make financial instruments that are tradable within a country or between countries. So this is also a source of optimism for me, that we have ways of doing this. I should also say, to explain, in Australia, the government does not give subsidies to farmers. It's all market-based, and so if they want to change their attitude, their practices, they will do it. Often farmers will do it to be more profitable in any case, but in some cases these kind of new financial instruments are of interest. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. I think all of us here can agree that we know the value of soil, secure soils. Therefore, rather than asking the governments to subsidize, we should ask them to invest, because it's investment in the future of the citizens, the future of generations' health, future of generations' ecosystems, clean air, clean water, everything that human beings use stem from soil. So we should call it investment. And I think like what you're doing, Alex, with the Australian government, it will be great if the Australian government is listening here and they vote for us at the IUCN Congress for this motion. If possible, we should kind of ask them to do so, given that they have guidance from someone like yours. So I'm really happy to hear both of you speak, learn from both of you. And I urge whoever is present here in the form of IUCN members to please consider this motion for to be voted in, like Irene was suggesting. And if we make something like this possible, a global legal instrument, this will be first of its kind, which will kind of, in my opinion, in my optimistic opinion, snowball into things, having something really concrete around soil across the world. So thanks a lot, everyone. And this is the last of the conversations we have with respect to IUCN Motion 007 Soil Security. At Safe Soil, we'll continue to have these conversations around soil. We will have more speakers come in and go who are given their lives to soil and building soils across the world. Thanks a lot for listening to us. And if you have any questions or anything, please write to policy.support@consciousplanet.org. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions if your questions are not answered here. And thanks a lot, Irene. Thanks a lot, Alex. Thanks a lot, Julio, and all the speakers who spoke in the last two panels. And we're privileged to have you all here. And let's make soil security motion happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you.
See you
Bye-bye.
somewhere. See you around.
See you around. Yeah, bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.